Welcome to the Real Chili Podcast.
And the Golden Eagles of Marquette University in Milwaukee are bound for the Final Four for only the third time ever.
5 seconds left. Marquette down by one, trying to avoid the upset. Blue the drive, the left hand. It's good. 1 second to play. Vander Blue has put Marquette in front by one.
And I want to win every day as basketball players, as students, and I want to win every day, most importantly, as people.
Do you hear that, people? Do you hear it? It's faint, but it's there. It's the sound of a pulse. Good day to everybody out there in the world of Marquette basketball. This is the Real Chili Podcast. I am Brian Henry, and today, yes, we're selling hope, and nobody is shouting louder from his street corner than the man in Jacksonville, Florida. On today's pod, Mr. Pete Mohan. Peter, what's up?
Mr. Slappy, Mr. Kool-Aid, whatever you guys call me.
You've got hope. I'm thankful you're here because you have somehow convinced me that we have a shot at this, and I'm all in.
I really don't know how much of me is just blind optimism and how much is based in objective fact, because you have to admit I'm someone who enjoys the numbers and crunching those things, and
you're gonna bring those to the people here shortly.
Sure, but you know, as they say, there's always some confirmation bias, and maybe I look at the statistics with some rose-colored lenses. No, there's absolutely a channel of hope for this team. I mean, the peace is flowing like a river right now, and I think we're going to make this team a channel of his peace.
Well done. That's a shouts to neighbor Pete and the Lenten Madness.
Oh, hell yeah. So, to answer your question, Brian, of course there's hope. After that Creighton game, Marquette is still in position to grab a bid, and really, if you think about it, if they win their next two games, they are controlling their own destiny. They can get into the tournament just by winning games at this point.
So what we are doing on this pod today is previewing the Big East tournament and basically explaining to you how Marquette is going to find a way to get itself into the NCAA tournament and what the scenarios are to make that happen. If you want to hear a full recap of the Creighton game, that's not going to be us. We're going to give you a thought here in just a second. Mike Lavender, Pete Worth, just the other day gave you a terrific recap of that game. I encourage you to go back and listen to that in your feed if you haven't. Pete, you and I do need to say, though, just for a short thought on Creighton, a great way to close out the Bradley Center. Andrew Rousey, like, don't get me wrong, like, there are plenty of moments I want to wring your neck, but oh my God, I was flipping out on the few of those threes you threw in. That was just fun, and I'm glad they ended it. Screw Creighton. Always a fun. That's 5 straight wins over Creighton. Oh,
yeah, that is an insane statistic right there. 5 straight against Creighton. That's great.
Against some good teams. But that was a good way to close it out. And you're right. You just said it. It gives them an opportunity going, because a loss there, they needed another quality win, and they got it.
Yeah, and I think it's great always to get a win on senior night. And when the one senior who's going out has a heroic effort, I think that's always kind of magical. And, you know, combine that with it being the final game in the BC, it was overall a great way to leave a sweet taste in your mouth for the BC and for seniors across Marquette. If you're a senior out there listening today, congratulations. It had to feel good if you were there for that. So congrats to your class. Hopefully, you know, there's more magic in store for you guys yet this season.
And we should mention before we set the stage, with the regular season over, the postseason individual awards have not come out yet. But the Big East did release its all-league team for the season. They are as follows: 6 players on the Big East first team, no Marquette players on it. Keelan Martin out of Butler, Shamari Pons, St. John's, Jalen Brunson, of course, out of Villanova, and Mikal Bridges. Trayvon Blewett, a 3-time first-teamer in his career, and Marcus Foster out of Creighton. I don't think we have any argument with any of those 6 names being first-teamers in the league. Mm-hmm. Second team, you got 5 guys. He proved it yesterday. Kyrie Thomas out of Creighton.
Yep.
Marcus Derrickson out of Georgetown.
Debatable.
Angel Delgado. Desi Rodriguez. I know you disagree there. Marcus Howard from Marquette getting a second-team nod and 2 honorable mentions, just 2. Kyron Cartwright out of Providence and senior Andrew Rousey with a Big East honorable mention. So props to Marcus and Andrew Rousey, and I can hear the gnashing of teeth and whining from people all over the country on why Sam Hauser wasn't included in that. Peter, your thoughts?
Well, I think that you can just look at what the other Big East coaches have said over the course of this season and last about Sam, and that the fact that Marquette's offense is keyed through him. He's a versatile player who doesn't make mistakes, and he's efficient, one of the most efficient players in the country, actually, top 10.
I mean, he's no Matt Help, but he's good.
He's no Matt Help, but his usage is a little higher than Matt's. We'll give him that. But to be left off in favor of Marcus Derrickson, I think, is the most stinging aspect of this. But absolutely, Sam's one of the best.
I wasn't gonna do it, but now I'm gonna do it. Here is why Sam didn't make an all-conference team. Maybe, just maybe, Marcus Howard or Andrew Rousey could concede a handful of shots a game to get the ball in Sam's hand more. For the love of God, maybe if we won a few more games, Sam is in there. Like, he had a few things playing against him, in my opinion, to keep him off the all-league team. We had 2 human vacuums of guards who just suck up every shot opportunity that they get, and then we went 9-9. I think if you go 11-7, they might have gotten a third guy in there. But unfortunately, that's how it plays out.
As long as we're on this topic, Brian, I'm going to have a hot take here.
Bring it.
I
hate
that term so much. I hate hot
Today
takes.
is about heat. Bring the heat.
My hot take is that Sam Hauser is not perfect.
Oh, he doesn't walk on water?
He doesn't.
His turnaround jumper was not, touched by, God did not touch him and say, you will be able to back down and hit fall away 12-footers.
Well, I do agree that throughout the course of the year, Mojo could have and should have done a better job of getting Sam looks. Let's be honest here. Sam isn't Rip Hamilton. He's not coming flying around those curls and is wide open.
I don't think it's that big of a deal that he wasn't on the team.
No.
That's my opinion.
But I think
this
is a good
season.
opportunity.
Take away.
I think this is a good opportunity because, I mean, look back at all our podcasts. How much time have we devoted to saying something negative about Sam Hauser?
Like 0.
Exactly.
It has to be 0
So
minutes.
why don't we just say this right now? The areas that Sam can improve so that he's not left off next year, at least on the offensive end, is he needs to, 1, do a better job of either adding speed or becoming more elusive and coming off curls and getting himself open. And the other thing is he needs to add more to his dribble drive. I think he's done a great job of advancing his post game. I love the way he backs guys down and can hit that fall away, but he has to be able to put the ball on the floor for more than 1 dribble if he wants to be able to get his own shot. I don't know.
I'll end our thoughts on Sam with this. I think with Andrew Rousey no longer on the floor next year, you can pretty much pencil Sam into one of those all Big East teams. He'll be the one to determine where he ends up. But Sam is.
I think Joey will
terrific.
throw him the rock a few times too.
I think they're going to do an excellent job of getting him the ball. But Peter, as exciting as next season sounds, this season is still unfolding in front of us. So, folks, let's run through and get you set up. If you haven't memorized it already, here is the situation. On the day that we record, which is March 4th, a Sunday, the Lord's Day, Marquette has finished the season 18-12. 9-9 in the Big East Conference. A beautiful 500 record.
God, are we average?
Through 18 games. Beautifully average. All right. As it currently stands, as we're recording, Joe Lenardi has not updated today. So we do
Wake
not have the
up,
latest from,
Joe. What are you doing?
We do not have the latest from ESPN. However, CBS currently has us as the last 4 in. T-Rank currently has us on the last 4 in. And Bracket Matrix has us as the 3rd team out. So Marquette sits, I think we can say, squarely on the bubble right now and is in need of victories. So here's what the week presents going forward. The Big East tournament spots have been slated. How ridiculous is the fact, Pete, that Seton Hall-Butler game determined basically every seed between 3 and 7 yesterday?
Oh, yeah, that is
pretty
crazy.
Unbelievable.
And the fact that Mike shared this tweet with me earlier, I'm sure you saw it, that if Marquette had beat DePaul, they would be the 3 seed.
Right, which is, oh, trust me, we're gonna bemoan losing to DePaul plenty on this podcast. Don't worry as we get into it.
It's going to be on our gravestones, I think.
Right.
That loss to DePaul. ...
It is. But this is the scenario. Marquette will play on the first day of the tournament this Wednesday, 9:30 p.m. Eastern, 6:30 for those of you out on the West Coast, against DePaul, the last seed in the league. A win in that game gets you a date with Villanova. So, to me, it's pretty black and white. So here's where we're going to really
Everyone loves
get
a
into
Philly
it.
girl.
Yes. Here's where we're going to get into it today. Pete has crunched the numbers. He has done an excellent job researching where things are at right now and what the different scenarios are. So, Pete, I served this podcast up on a platter to you. Please educate us on what the scenarios are for this team going into the Big East tournament.
Okay, so as you mentioned, our first game is DePaul. Scenario 1, if you will.
Just don't say it. I know you're going to say it.
Scenario 1, we fall to DePaul.
Oh, Jesus.
In which case...
Oh, Lord, don't let it happen. Don't let it happen. For the love of all that is holy, don't lose to DePaul twice in a season. Sorry, go on.
And in fact, we won't be able to make the tournament because we'll be at confession for the remainder of March.
Oh, oh God, disband the program, burn down the everything. Oh my God, I cannot imagine the show that we have to do if they lose to DePaul on Wednesday.
Cock the shotgun and head out to pasture.
We might cancel the podcast. Lavender will not be able to cope. I can tell you that. I fear for his well-being if we lose to DePaul.
So that there's no fake news out there. Just to reiterate, if we lose to DePaul, there's 0 chance we make the tournament. And
get it out of your head.
And God, would the NIT selection committee even consider us after that?
I don't know. 2 losses to DePaul would sure look bad for the NIT. Oh God. Oh, you're making it so bad.
Okay.
Please say something
all
else.
All right. We'll move on to scenario 2. Scenario 2, which I think we could all agree is the most likely scenario, slipping past DePaul in the first round and then falling to Villanova in the second round, in the quarterfinals.
I think what we all consider to be the most likely scenario.
Correct.
Villanova coming into this tournament, for those who have obviously paid attention to the league, they did not win the regular season league title despite cooking Xavier twice this season. Losing 5 league games, I think, is stunning. Those are all of Villanova's losses this year coming in the conference. And I think they are going to show up at the Big East tournament eager to demonstrate to Xavier especially, to see them in the title game, and to the committee that they want to be a 1 seed. And I think to guarantee that they're a 1 seed, they need to win this tournament. And they have the roster to do it. They have the experience. You will get a ready-to-play Villanova team in that quarterfinal game. Mm-hmm. So that's going to make it an uphill battle for Marquette, in my opinion. Who knows? Maybe they show up and they don't give a damn. It's possible. I don't see it happening.
Yeah, no. I mean, it's certainly possible. That obviously is the third scenario, is beating Villanova somehow, and that's another thing that we can probably say for sure. If we are able to beat DePaul and Nova, we are in.
I will begin tithing 10% of my salary to the Catholic Church if that happens. Well, maybe if we win the tournament, I'll go to 10. I'll go to 3 if we just beat Villanova.
There you go.
But if we win the Big East tournament, 10. You Archbishop. I'm not even sure he's the Bishop of Phoenix these days. But nevertheless, he's out there.
They would change the lyrics of shots to tithes. So yeah. If we beat Villanova, I think not only are we a lock, but I think that we probably don't have to play in Dayton in a play-in game as well.
And look, here's the hope I'm going to sell. Don't roll your eyes. Don't drive off the road into a ditch, okay? We've scored the ball against Villanova this year. We have turned their perimeter defense in knots with our guards. Now, that said, Jalen Brunson has taken Marcus Howard and Andrew Rousey and put them in small cardboard boxes both times we've played them, and put them on the side of the court because they can't be on the floor with him. So that is going. I will be fascinated to see what Wojo's going to do, if he's going to say, well, we're just going to let Jalen do whatever he wants, and hopefully we slow down everybody else. we would see. I don't want to do a giant Villanova preview here for everybody,
No.
but they're going to need to do some coaching, and they're going to need to get some breaks. That's what's going to have to happen.
There's two slivers of hope for me. One, that our offense was able to execute both games that we played against Villanova, and the fact that in that last Nova game against Seton Hall, I saw them miss shots, Brian. They missed open shots. I was taken aback by the fact that I saw Villanova players missing open shots. Gives me some hope that Marquette would potentially beat them at some point.
It's possible.
It's possible.
And you like to hope that in that scenario, again, Marquette fortunate enough to get by DePaul, is able to play. They have to play their best game of the season in their biggest game. It's very. I mean, they are. Here's a critique of Marquette. Here's a critique of Marquette's resume right now. For as great as sweeping Seton Hall and Creighton in, you still don't have that standout win. That win against Villanova a year ago dragged them into the tournament. Mm-hmm. That was a huge.
Well, plus
huge
2 wins against
victory.
Xavier last year too, not to mention.
Correct. Yes, but Xavier was not at the level they are.
They were
right
9-9 last year.
We've gotten 6 shots against top 10 teams this year. Got boat raced by Purdue. Marginally competitive against Wichita, but I don't think we were really.
No,
I don't think we really.
We weren't
scared
ready
them.
for that.
Right. We had 2 games at home. We had a shot against Nova. Didn't finish it. I think probably should have beaten Xavier at home.
That first
JP
game.
Marcura happens, and I want to pull my hair out, and lost that, and then never had a shot at Xavier, and never really had a shot at Villanova. The score looked closer than what it really was.
Well, and we'd be remiss to not mention the fact that we got absolutely railroaded by Butler twice.
Correct. So without rehashing, every inch as to how we got here. So those are the scenarios that you laid out. So
let's go back to the most likely scenario.
How does this play out with the most likely scenario of a victory over DePaul and a loss to Villanova? Is there a path into the field if that happens?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the one thing we also should mention...
Absolutely, really?
Oh, there's absolutely a path.
Okay.
The question is, though, this is one thing we didn't mention, is what happens if we lose by 20 to Villanova? That's certainly different than losing by 6 to Villanova. Beating DePaul, whatever. Losing to Nova in that first legitimate game of the Big East tournament by 20 probably wouldn't be the best message to send to the committee. But let's for the sake of argument, let's just say it's an average loss to Villanova. We lose by 8.
Just say it's a competitive game.
Competitive game.
5 to 8
Yeah,
points.
sure. Yeah. Okay. So in that scenario, one of the few things that are really going well on a macro level this year is that there's not really that much potential for bid stealing. There's just not that many teams that are ahead of Marquette from mid-major conferences.
And to be clear for people, so when Pete says bid stealing, basically leagues that would get an at-large team has a team that would not get an at-large bid win the league.
Correct.
League tournament is what you're talking about.
Yes. For example, the West Coast Conference with Gonzaga and St. Mary's. If for some reason one of those 2 teams did not win the tournament title game, then perhaps, yes.
You would get a third team out of the West Coast Conference stealing a bid from somebody.
Essentially knocking Marquette down 1 spot on the ladder.
Gotcha.
And so just looking at this, the potential opportunities for that are the one we mentioned, West Coast Conference, one of Gonzaga or St. Mary's not winning. That's less likely. Both of those teams are now in the semifinals of that conference. Probably a 3% chance that one of those 2 teams doesn't. So let's say that doesn't happen. The next one you got is Nevada out of the Mountain West, and currently they are the only representative from the Mountain West in the bracket. And so if they were to not win the championship game of the Mountain West, that would be a potential opportunity for a bid to be stolen. That's a little more likely because unlike the West Coast Conference, there's not 2 teams that have an opportunity to prevent that. So any of those conferences, Brian, that have 1 team that would potentially make it as an at-large if that team was, those are the worst. So, but then
we also have another 2.
Atlantic 10. That's a
Atlantic 10. I think is fascinating.
It's fascinating because there's 2 good teams, and really it's a positive scenario because
do we know that St. Bonaventure's in? Rhode Island is probably definitely in. Do we know that St. Bonaventure is automatically in?
We don't know.
24-6, 14-4 in the league.
Okay, so the Bonnies They have a double. But that's the other thing about the A10 is the top two teams, who are both look like they could get in as an at-large, are double-buyed all the way to the semifinals. So the potential of them even having a bad loss is really diminished by those other two rounds happening before it gets to them. But at the same time, because two of those two teams, Rhode Island and St. Bonnie's, it's the same situation as the West Coast Conference where you got two of the Final Four already. Probability of one of those teams not winning is very low. So essentially, one of those teams wins, the other team gets in. St. Bonaventure, though, if they lose to a shitty team in the semifinals, they're the ones that could probably get knocked down. And Rhode Island actually is listed lower on the T rank, and they've kind of hit the skids late in the year themselves after a really hot start. So the possibility is there for one of those teams to actually drop behind Marquette with a bad loss in their first round, which is a benefit.
To me, the biggest point is you're going to need a lot of help. I don't think it's a ridiculous amount of help, but they would need to be on the right end of some very fortunate scenarios to get in to the NCAA tournament.
Marquette, you're talking about? Or St.
Marquette,
Bonaventure?
I'm talking.
Yeah,
Marquette, I'm talking about. Mm-hmm. It just as you're explaining, as we're looking at the A10, the West Coast, heck, even the Pac-12. Right now, Lenardi's only got 3 Pac-12 teams in the NCAA tournament. I mean, big conference tournaments are weird like that. Like somebody could get hot and win that league.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Really, is actually it's interesting this year that it's not the bid. The bid stealing isn't going to be your traditional mid-major team that comes in and knocks a higher mid-major team down and keeps us out. The bid stealing is going to be coming from your power conferences from teams that are on the bubble but are behind Marquette who make a run. That would be like a Notre Dame, for example, who really hasn't played well because they haven't had Bonzi Colson. But if they win 3 games in the ACC tournament, I would probably slip them in ahead of Marquette with just a DePaul win and a Nova loss.
That's a great point.
So it's more about
that would get Notre Dame to 21 wins.
Right.
And that's you would assume if you win 3 games in the ACC tournament against pretty good competition.
Absolutely. So we really have to be more looking in the rearview mirror that some of those other teams aren't making that leap. But ahead of us, where we're seated right now, there's opportunities for some of those teams to drop out. I'm talking about Louisville, who Louisville faces Florida State. So those are 2 teams, Florida State, Louisville. That's an interesting game for us to watch. They play in the first round of the ACC tournament. If either of those teams gets blown out, I could see them dropping.
Can I stop you for a second? I love how in the weeds we are here. We are locking in to opening round of ACC tournaments to see how Marquette's getting a bid.
I love it.
This is terrific stuff. Way to go. Keep it up.
So check out that Louisville Florida State game. But if let's say Louisville loses, that'll be them losing 5 of their last 6 games to finish the season. Regardless of your opinion of Marquette, they deserve to be in ahead of a Louisville team that's doing that. A Marquette team who has won 5 of their last 7 games, I should point out, including 3 road wins. That's another thing that the committee is going to be considering is how do these teams finish? And I think that Marquette can honestly say, if they're not losing to DePaul, that they finish the season strongly. There's teams out there who have stumbled down the stretch, and to the benefit of Marquette. Providence, honestly, even being one of them, which there's brackets that have Marquette in and Providence out at this point.
So as Pete has carefully laid out, there are 3 scenarios.
Clear as mud.
First one, we're not going to offer any more words to. The second is the most likely about beating DePaul and falling, and I think we can all agree. Pete, so really quickly, we beat Villanova in that game, and obviously we're all on cloud 9. Does that get you past Dayton, or is it just okay, we're in and be happy wherever you end up?
I think
does a win of that caliber vault them even further into a lock of basically past being an 11 seed by team playing in Dayton on Tuesday?
If we beat Nova, not only does it give us a signature win, but we would be 5-7 in Quadrant 1 wins, which 5 Quadrant 1 wins and 4 Quadrant 2 wins. That's a pretty strong resume, regardless of how you're looking at it. I mean, even if you're saying you haven't really made hay against the best teams, Marquette has enough quality wins that you can't look at their schedule and say, they didn't really play anyone.
Oh, you're right.
No one's saying that about Marquette this year.
No, you are absolutely right. So give me your rough. I know you haven't mathematically mapped it out, but based on what you're looking at, Pete, and what you said, percentage chance of making the tournament with a win over DePaul and a loss to Villanova, we'd say.
I would say 60.
Really?
60, yeah.
You think they have a better than 50-50 shot if they lose to Villanova?
Yes.
Man.
Where we sit right now.
I don't think so. I really think I can tell you how I'm looking at this Big East tournament. I am purely viewing it as they have to win both games. I know there's a chance, but I don't think you can bank on it. I think it's there's so many things that need to happen. They just have to, and they need that win. They don't have a win like that to hang their hat on this season. They're going to get one more shot at it. I think they got to win it.
Yeah.
That's just me, where I'm at, where I'm watching them this year.
Well, I kind of feel like any team who wins one game in their conference tournament and loses their next game, you go 1-1 in your conference tournament, that's usually a scenario where you don't move up or down. And where Marquette sits right now, it couldn't be more squarely on the bubble. I hate that term per se, but we are by the average, either like the last team in or the first team out. And looking at the 10 teams ahead of us, the 10 teams behind us, there's a lot more teams that can do slipping than there are teams that can do rising in order to enhance their resume to the point that it's better than Marquette. And that's why I would say 60% is the 40% scenario is teams below us pass us. And the 60% is we sit right where we are. We end up in Dayton. I think that at this point, Brian, the most likely scenario is that Marquette is playing early in the week in Dayton.
That is terrific stuff. Hopefully everyone out there has their heads wrapped around it and is eager and excited for the week. We're going to wrap up the pod with this. Pete, the regular season is officially over. You recall many of the things. You've had a lot of things to say on this podcast throughout the year, on record for people to say. If you're summing up the season to this point, Marquette has been better, okay, or below the expectations you had for the season?
I would say Marquette is just finished below my expectations for the season. Early in the year, I predicted we'd finish just above 500 in the Big East, but I mean, this team is square on what people predicted from them. I mean, there's some people that predicted a little bit worse than 500 in the Big East, some that predicted a bit better, but from 10 to 8 to 8 and 10, that was probably 90% of Marquette fans thought that we'd finish somewhere in that realm, and we finished right at 500. I mean, I don't think that you can be disappointed at all, other than we missed some opportunities. But hey, we won all three of our overtime games. We made some magic happen in those scenarios. So
you and I were talking before we started recording. They pulled rabbits out of their hats at Providence, at Creighton, and at Georgetown. I mean, those were three huge road victories to where we're not even having any of the conversations today that we had about them making the tournament without any of those three victories. Now, with that said, and this is where I go, where I get, it's not upset, but I look back and go, God, I'll even toss St. John's out because I think going there, they were playing great and Pons was unbelievable. The Georgia game in non-conference and the DePaul game on the road. I think those are, I don't want to use the word inexcusable, but I mean, those are the two that if you're a tournament team, you go and get. And I think this team, with those two, take those two losses off the board, give this team 20 victories right now and 2 fewer losses. I think they're a lock in the NCAA tournament as a 9 seed or something, and we're playing for seeding coming into the tournament as opposed to playing for our lives. And that's the only bummer. I agree with you. I'd say slightly disappointed because I was hoping we'd be fighting for seeding here and not a spot. But this could go down as one of the more memorable runs in Marquette basketball history if they can play their way in. Because I will say, think about where they were after that St. John's loss on the road. We all thought it was over. I'm not, or at least I shouldn't speak for you. I did. I didn't think they'd be able to play their way back in, and they found an extra level inside of them and got them into a position where at least they have a shot.
All right, Brian, I'm going to leave you with something crazy here. First, I want to shout out to Rousey one more time because
Absolutely.
hell of a senior night, and I just want to take half of my victory lap in buying Rousey stock in January.
You did.
I will vest half of that stock and
You did.
and keep the remainder for the rest of the season.
I still don't think you can cash till after that Villanova game.
I'm not cashing at all, but I will say the last 5 games, which are 4 wins and 1 loss, that loss being to DePaul, in our 4 wins, Andrew Rousey had 8 assists or more in each of those games. In our loss to DePaul, Andrew Rousey had 1 assist and 3 turnovers.
Ugh.
That tells you kind of all you need to know about when this team is playing well. It's when Rousey is distributing. And despite that disgusting loss, by the way, we were out rebounded 49-30 in case you were still wondering about that.
Stop reading stats from that game.
No, but this team is great when Rousey distributes, and he has done a much better job down the stretch of accomplishing that.
And hopefully he has 2 more games like Pete was just describing in him. We will be there for all of it as we go into postseason play. Keep an eye out for the Real Chili Pod. We're going to have podcasts. I don't have the exact schedule out in front, but we'll be firing content off to you, reacting to all the Big East tournament games. And obviously, as we head into Selection Sunday, it's going to be a fun time. For Pete Mohan and everybody here at the Real Chili Podcast, go Marquette. We'll see you next week.
One more stat, Brian.
What you got?
Guess what happened in 2011?
What happened in 2011?
UConn finished 9-9 in the Big East.
Oh, how dare you? Don't you freaking dare. Oh, my
Goodbye,
God.
fans.
You are so lucky you're 2,000 miles away from me. 3,000 miles away from me. Oh, my God. I'd throw a shoe at you for saying that. That's awful.
Let's go.
Oh. God.
I'm ready to ring out Ahoya in March, Brian.
UConn. You compared it to... Oh, my God. Yeah, we got Kemba Walker on this team. Sure.
Hey.
Yeah.
Kemba Walker and Andrew Rousey both have a beard.
Oh, my...